Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you, many kings and prophets have desired to see what you see, and have not seen it. To hear what you hear, and have not heard it. I thank you, Father, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise, and revealing them to the innocent and the simple.
This was the scene in Moscow and across Russia, as 40 million participated in the largest emergency defense drills since the collapse of the Soviet Union.
It's all over the television. You can feel it. It feels like tensions are rising.
From high school students in gas masks to hundreds in hazmat suits to Russian Marines rehearsing enemy interceptions. Polls here show half of Russia fears a new Cold War with the West has already begun. Syria's army, backed by Russia's Air Force, has been pounding rebel areas of eastern Aleppo for weeks. But President Vladimir Putin defends his country's support, saying it's necessary to defeat Islamic militants in Syria.
We keep hearing Aleppo, Aleppo, Aleppo. Yes, but the thing is either keeping a terrorist nest there or crushing that nest while doing everything possible to minimize civilian casualties.
While polls show a majority here support Moscow's presence there, many believe the conflict has hurt their country's global standing. Add to that concern Russia's recent military action elsewhere. In early October, it moved a nuclear-capable missile system close to Poland and Lithuania, while holding several drills on its western border. Then, Russia released the first images of its new thermonuclear armed ballistic missile, dubbed Satan II. A government-controlled news agency touted the missile could destroy an area the size of Texas or France. NATO is taking notice, building up troops and other resources in Poland, Estonia, and Latvia to prevent a potential incursion by the Russians. The US and Britain also just announced plans to send planes and tanks to Eastern Europe next year, joining a 4,000-member ground force in the Baltic states.
A video recently uploaded to the internet shows a mysterious green-colored object making its way across the sky over northern Japan. The object was seen by thousands of people in Niigata Prefecture on October 31st. Now, many people said it must be a UFO, but experts say it was most likely a very bright meteor with a peculiar color and a burning fragment of satellite.
Iraqi security officials say at least 40 people have been killed in 3 separate terrorist attacks in northern Iraq's Salahuddin province. In Tikrit, a bomber detonated an explosives-laden ambulance at the southern entrance to the city during the morning rush hour, killing 13 people. Another attacker detonated a vehicle in a car park for pilgrims visiting one of Shiite Muslims' holiest shrines in Samarra, south of Tikrit. The bomb killed at least 8 people, including 2 Iranian pilgrims. In the same province, militants attacked the residence of a tribal chief, killing 16 people, including the leader. Authorities in both cities declared curfews, fearing possible further attacks.
Italian police have clashed with protesters in Florence who are opposed to a constitutional referendum called by Prime Minister Matteo Renzi. It was the first protest against Renzi and the referendum to turn violent. The Prime Minister has staked his political career on a yes vote in the constitutional reform referendum set to be held on December 4th.
In neighboring Syria, at least 6 children have been killed after government forces allegedly bombed a kindergarten northeast of the capital Damascus on Sunday. The UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said shells hit while the children were playing in the yard in the rebel-held suburb of Harasta. The group added that the death toll could rise. It comes on the same day as a mortar strike on a military hospital in Damascus At least one civilian was killed in that attack and a further 12 were injured. The military said that the mortars were fired from the rebel-held suburb of Douma.
Suddenly, Oklahoma seems to be the country's earthquake capital. There was a strong one last night in Cushing, west of Tulsa.
Nick Tanner says his entire apartment shook violently.
I swear it looked like the ceiling was about to collapse on me. The walls were shaking, the ceiling's moving.
Tanner was home when the 5.0 earthquake tore a hole in his ceiling. His apartment was severely damaged, as were many of the historic buildings in downtown Cushing. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, this is the second major earthquake to hit the area in the past 2 months. A quake near Pawnee, Oklahoma, registered a 5.8, the largest in the state's history. In recent years, Oklahoma has been hit with thousands of earthquakes. Since 2006, the number of magnitude 3 or greater has jumped from an average of 2 or 3 a year to almost 900 last year.
Cities across China have been experiencing heavy air pollution in early November. 1/10 of the land territory has been blanketed by heavy smog. Most affected are the northern and northeastern areas. 7 provinces and municipalities, including Beijing and Tianjin, have been different levels of pollution. On Thursday, Beijing issued an orange alert for smog. Visibility in some areas had dropped to below 100 meters. Flights were delayed and canceled. In Baoding, Hebei province, the PM 2.5 index peaked at a severely hazardous level of 326 points on Friday. The air quality index even reached 500 in the cities of Suihua, Harbin, and Daqing in northeast provinces over the last few days.
It's still not known if the bodies inside what appears to be a mass grave about 30 kilometers south of Mosul are civilians or military or both. It's in an area where the United Nations says about 50 Iraqi police were massacred last month by ISIL. But there are chilling signs that civilians are among the dead. The grave was found in Hammam al-Alil, which the army just recaptured from ISIL. With all of the focus on Mosul, it's sometimes easy to forget that a large number of towns outside of the city are still controlled by ISIL. Towns that the Iraqi army, a variety of militias, and in these areas the Kurdish Peshmerga will still need to recapture.
20 civilians have been killed in a US-led coalition airstrike in the village of Al-Haisha, which is 40 kilometers north of Raqqa. That's according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Well, according to the UK-based monitor group, casualties include 9 women and 2 children. The coalition has made no comment on the report, but a spokesman for the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces has dismissed the claims. ISIL-controlled Al-Haisha has been the target of a new offensive launched by the SDF in a bid to recapture Raqqa from the jihadist group.
As the battle for Mosul continues, along this newly established humanitarian corridor, they walk, fleeing neighborhoods where fighting is still going on, arriving in suburbs that have only just been secured but may not be completely safe. At the emotional reunion of these sisters and their families, one asks the other, "How did you manage to escape the car bomb?"
We fled as the shelling intensified. We were forced to leave. We witnessed several houses destroyed when a car bomb exploded.
This family left the neighborhood of Al-Samah on the eastern outskirts of Mosul and are now living with relatives in the recently recaptured district of Gogjal.
Our life under ISIL was complete misery and suffering. ISIL forced women to wear full body cover and gloves and to fully cover our faces.
They're doing their best in a house with no electricity or running water, as concerns over the internally displaced rise.
The most difficult thing that we're facing regarding IDPs is during their move from one neighborhood of a conflict zone to another neighborhood that is somewhat secured, but that will still be within the combat zone. This area, we cannot go there as local government staff. It is controlled only by Iraqi security forces. As a civilian authority, we would receive civilians from a secured area and then take them to camps for the internally displaced.
Some, however, are opting to stay out of camps altogether.
Vladimir Putin, the man some Americans think interfered in their election, was one of the first leaders to congratulate Donald Trump.
We've heard his electoral slogans while he was presidential candidate, which focused on resuming and restoring relations between Russia and the United States. We do understand that this way won't be an easy task, taking into account the current degraded state of relations between Russia and the US.
There were cheers and applause in Russia's parliament as news of Trump's victory arrived.
Of course, we are pleased to acknowledge that the best candidate has won among the two that were presented to the US electorate for selection.
Russian TV has long echoed the leadership's view that Hillary Clinton is anti-Russian, Trump a potential friend.
The president-elect's campaign comments that NATO members might not get US protection unless they paid their bills, his call on Russian hackers to find Clinton's missing emails. These positions and more shocked the US establishment and its foreign allies, but they went down very well over here.
Russian optimism is cautious, though.
History, including the modern one, knows many examples where pre-election rhetoric by a candidate who later won changed into a destructive direction toward Russia.
On the streets of the capital, Muscovites told us what they hoped for.
It is a new trend, I think. I would like him to make friends with Putin. Our country very much needs it.
I think relations in the world will get better, and the relations with Russia too.
I think the sanctions will be dropped because the sanctions against Russia are wrong.
And at a Trump party in Moscow thrown by pro-Kremlin nationalists, a clear sign of which way they want Europe to turn next. A portrait of Marine Le Pen joins Trump and Putin. The far-right politician is running in the French presidential election next year.